Doria Ragland gone to prison, which would suggest why she abandoned her daughter Meghan.
And I think we were just hit so hard at the beginning with a lot of mistruths that I made the choice to not read anything.
The producers also said they would like her mother to show her how to cook something.
For years, Meghan Markle has carefully shaped the story of who she is and where she comes from. The image has always been clean, emotional, and powerful. A single daughter raised by Doria Ragland. A devoted mother, a tight bond. A story people could believe in and root for. But what if that picture is missing an entire piece? Because lately, quiet whispers from old California circles and family connections have been hinting at something far more complicated. Something buried long before Meghan was ever born. The suggestion is simple but explosive. That Doria may have had another child before Meghan. A daughter the public was never told about. And when those whispers allegedly reached Meghan herself, sources say she didn't know what to say, just silence. Shock. The same kind of silence her mother once gave her? Because if this is true, it doesn't just add a footnote to Meghan's past, it rewrites it entirely. The real question isn't just who this woman might be, it's why she was hidden for so long. And to understand that, you have to look back at the years when Doria vanished. The years no one can explain. The moment DNA started pulling old truths into the light. And the British writer whose story feels way too familiar to ignore. And before we go any further, understand this. What you're about to hear involves matching DNA. Results, identical phone calls, and details so specific they feel impossible to dismiss. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let's go there. Here's the thing. Doria Ragland is now photographed standing beside royalty, sitting front row at historic moments, presented as one of the most dignified and steady presences in Meghan's life. But there's a chunk of her past that simply doesn't add up. Not weeks, not months.
And she's not seen him in the latter years, more importantly. I mean, she's not just seen him, she's like totally snubbed him.
Years, long stretches of time, during some of the most important parts of Meghan's childhood when Doria just wasn't there. No photos, no appearances, no records, nothing. She disappeared completely. In today's world, that doesn't happen by accident, especially not for the mother of someone who would later become one of the most famous women alive. You'd expect something, a job, a lease, a snapshot, a trail. But there's nothing. It's like someone erased that chapter on purpose. People will tell you she was just keeping a low profile, that she was figuring things out, that she was private. That's the easy explanation, the comfortable one. But when you actually sit with it, it doesn't hold. Because single mothers don't vanish like that. They show up. They exist in school records, neighborhood photos, workplaces. Life doesn't let you disappear when a child depends on you. So when someone does disappear for years, it raises a different question. What would make someone need to stay that invisible? What situation demands total erasure? The whispers about those missing years aren't about modesty or privacy. They're about intention. Like those years were meant to be forgotten. And maybe they would have been if Meghan had lived a normal life. But when you marry into the most famous family on earth and people start digging, gaps don't stay hidden. They start screaming. And the strangest part, when Doria finally reappeared, she never explained where she'd been. No stories.
Very, very bad for both of them. Meghan, who was screamed, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." And Harry, who...
No reflection, just silence, heavy silence. The kind that feels protective, rehearsed, like revealing the truth would change everything. When you put it all together, the missing years, the lack of records, the silence, it stops looking like coincidence. It starts looking like a secret, one that's been guarded for decades. And that brings us to Meghan herself. Because when Meghan talks about her childhood, it sounds almost too polished. A perfect origin story. A biracial girl raised by a strong, single black mother in Los Angeles against the odds, full of struggle and triumph. It's compelling. But details start shifting. Her father is present in one version, invisible in another. Her education story changes depending on the audience. And when people started checking facts, things didn't quite line up. Programs she described didn't exist exactly as she said. Narratives adjusted again and again. And look, everyone shapes their story, but most people aren't building a global brand on it. When your identity depends on consistency, cracks matter. These aren't random slip-ups. They're patterned, framed to fit whatever message works best at the time. And then 2021 happened. Meghan goes on her podcast and drops a bombshell. She says she took a DNA test and discovered she's 43% Nigerian. Not vague, not general. Exactly 43%. She's excited. Emotional, she FaceTimes her mother to share the news. And here's where everything changes. Doria doesn't react with surprise. She doesn't celebrate, she pauses. Long silence. And then she quietly says, I know. At the time, people thought it was emotional, beautiful, a deep connection. But looking back now,
It takes so much courage to admit that you need help. It takes so much courage to voice.
that pause sounds different. It sounds like recognition, like she'd heard those words before, because that exact scenario already happened. Years earlier, same percentage, same phone call, same pause, same response with someone else. And that someone was a British writer named Georgina Alton. In 2017, she took a DNA test. She got the results. 43% Nigerian. She FaceTimed her mother, there was a pause, and then careful words. She later wrote a book about it. Raceless, published in 2020, her story was public, reviewed, covered by major outlets, and in every single detail matches Meghan's later story. Identical. Not similar, identical. And when you hear that pause again, it stops sounding like emotion. It sounds like memory. It sounds like a mother recognizing a script she's already lived through. From there, the questions spiral. Why that exact percentage? Why that exact reaction? Why the missing years? Why does Doria's silence feel so calculated? And then the Nigeria trip happens. A homecoming that doesn't feel like one. Cultural missteps, discomfort. And when asked to show the DNA results that supposedly sparked the entire journey, Meghan doesn't have them. She declines help tracing her lineage. What should have been confirmation turns into doubt. And by the end, people aren't celebrating the connection. They're questioning it. Was the story barred? Was there another daughter? Was Doria protecting something far bigger than anyone realized? At this point, there are only two possibilities. Either Doria had another child during those missing years, a daughter raised out of sight, whose DNA story surfaced years later, or Meghan adopted someone else's deeply personal journey and made it her own. Either way, something isn't adding up. Two women, same percentage, same call, same pause, same words, that's not coincidence. And Doria's silence, that's not nothing. That's protection. Protection of a secret that's been buried for decades. Maybe even protection of a daughter the world doesn't know exists. Because sometimes the loudest truth isn't what's said, it's what's avoided. And that pause might be the most honest moment in this entire story. And here's the part people keep dancing around, the part that makes this whole situation feel less like messy storytelling and more like something that's been deliberately managed. If Doria truly had nothing to hide, if those missing years were just about privacy or personal struggle, then why has every attempt to clarify them been met with silence? Not anger, not denial, silence. The kind of silence that doesn't defend itself because it can't. The kind that knows if it speaks, too much spills out. Think about it. When public figures are accused of exaggerating or misunderstanding their past, they usually rush to explain. They correct timelines, they release statements, they show receipts, but here, nothing. No clarification about where Doria was, no concrete answers about those vanished years. No explanation for why the DNA story mirrors another woman's experience down to the smallest, strangest detail. It's just left hanging, like everyone's hoping the noise will move on to something else. And then there's Doria herself. Watch her closely in interviews. She's calm, measured, careful. She rarely elaborates, rarely volunteers information. Her words are chosen like landmines are buried beneath them. That FaceTime pause wasn't a slip. It wasn't confusion, it was calculation. A split second where decades of history rushed forward, and she had to decide how much to reveal without revealing anything at all. 2 words, I know. Not wow. Not really. Not tell me more. Just confirmation. Like someone acknowledging a truth they've carried for a long time. Now imagine being Meghan in that moment. You're excited. You think you unlocked a missing piece of yourself. You expect joy. Instead, you're met with silence. Heavy silence, the kind that drains the air out of the room, that alone would rattle anyone. And maybe that's why everything after that feels so forced. The urgency, the need to own the narrative, the Nigeria trip, the speeches. The constant repetition of the percentage, as if saying it enough times will make it unquestionable. But here's what people don't want to admit. Identity stories hit harder when they're borrowed from real pain. Georgina Alton lived her confusion. She felt out of place in her own family. Her DNA results didn't just give her pride, they gave her answers. And she wrote about it with rawness, not polish. Meghan's version, by contrast, feels curated, packaged, released at the right moment, to the right audience, with the right emotional beats. Same bones, different polish. And if Meghan did read Raceless, If that story resonated deeply with her, that opens up another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people don't steal stories out of malice. Sometimes they do it out of desperation. Out of the need to feel grounded, out of the fear that their own story isn't strong enough on its own. And if you've spent years reshaping your past, smoothing edges, adjusting facts, eventually you start looking for something solid to hold on to, something unquestionable. DNA feels unquestionable. Percentages feel scientific. Exact numbers feel authoritative. 43% Nigerian sounds unarguable, until it isn't. And then there's the other possibility, the one people are afraid to say out loud because it changes everything. What if there really is another daughter? A woman somewhere who grew up not knowing the full truth about who she is? A woman who took a DNA test and finally saw herself reflected accurately for the first time. A woman who made that phone call and heard the same pause, the same careful response. What if Doria wasn't reacting to Meghan at all? What if she was reacting to history repeating itself? That would explain so much. The missing years, the silence, the refusal to clarify, the emotional landmines. It would explain why Doria seems to know exactly when to stop talking, why she never expands on certain periods of her life, why she looks composed but guarded, like someone who's spent decades making sure one truth doesn't collide with another. And if that woman exists, imagine what it feels like watching all of this unfold from the outside. Watching someone else claim the story that unlocked your identity. Watching the world applaud it. Watching the headlines celebrate it. And choosing silence. Not because you're wrong, but because speaking would set off a storm you never asked for. Because sometimes being right costs too much. That's why this story won't die. Because no matter which version is true, borrowed narrative or hidden sister, the cracks keep showing. And every time someone tries to smooth them over, they widen instead. The internet notices patterns. People remember details. And once you see how specific this all is, you can't unsee it. Exact percentage. Same call. Same pause. Same response. Same emotional framing. Same timeline overlap. That's not coincidence. That's connective tissue, and Doria's role in all of this? Central, she's the common denominator, the keeper of the timeline. The only one who knows exactly what happened during those years nobody can account for. The only one who knows why that pause mattered. And the fact that she's never corrected anything, never denied anything outright tells you everything. Silence can be louder than denial. So maybe the truth isn't going to come out in a dramatic confession or a leaked document. Maybe it's already been revealed in pieces, in pauses, in omissions, in stories that don't quite sit right. Maybe that FaceTime moment wasn't emotional at all. Maybe it was the past knocking on the prison's door and Doria choosing once again not to open it. And until someone does. Until those missing years are explained, until that identical story is addressed honestly, this question isn't going anywhere. Because something real is buried under all of this. And buried things don't stay buried forever. They surface. Slowly, awkwardly, inconsistently, just like this has.